Oh, hang on, there we go. Just wipe the dust away from the lens. Well, good morning, one and all. What a fantastic morning it is here once again in Barnsley. It's an absolutely cracking morning, but temperature-wise, it's about 2 degrees. So it's just a bit cold. I hear you all coming in now. Jennifer, good morning. Cathoic, good morning to you. Oh, thank you very much. Nico Dispet, good morning to you. 27 Bike Brothers, good morning from Lubin in Poland. Good morning to you. And yes, we are once again back out because, like I say, when you do something like this that's very, very, very much weather dependent, and you've just had almost 3 storms in rapid succession, it's been incredibly hard to obviously get out and do this. Like I say, the first time we had like 80, 90 mile per hour winds. Practically, if I went out and that, you wouldn't be able to hear me. We've then had it absolutely tipping it down. The field was flooded one time, which again, like I say, wouldn't have been so much a good morning walk as a good morning wade. But yes, we are finally back out. Pretty Bird, good morning to you. And like I say, especially this morning, the field is still a bit incredibly wet and muddy, so if I miss reading comments or anything like that, it's not because I'm not trying to pay attention to it, it's because, well, I'm trying to stay on my feet. So, yes. So, good morning, everyone. How are you all? Very much. Like I say, good morning to you all. And like I say, once again, welcome back out into the wilds. It's been an absolutely, as always, fantastic morning. Oh, geese flying overhead. Don't know if you can see them. Oh no, that's the sun. Don't know if you'll see them. No, missed them. Yeah, but if you can, yeah. I don't know if you can hear the squelching, but I don't know if that's coming through on the camera. But yeah. So, yeah. Ukraine. First of all, before we start that, I know why you're all here. I know why you come. It's purely for these guys. Like I say, if you are in Ukraine, then don't worry. The ponies are with you as well. Is my accent getting in the way of me saying it properly? Could be worse. I could be even more further north, and we're talking like Newcastle north. You know, I could be saying, "What, Ukraine?" in a very bizarre, you know, Newcastle accent. So yeah, Yeah, it could be worse. But, you know, luck did bless me with being born here in Yorkshire, the best parts of the UK. So, yes, Ukraine. As I think Phonic said in chat, yes, it's war. And let me be once again very clear, as I have been from the start. I did not want war, and certainly no one in Ukraine wanted war. And I think most of the, again, people out there will agree, they just did not want a war straight up. The only person who did want a war was, of course, Putin. And, of course, with that, he has very much determined to, well, as Biden put it, follow the path of blood, as Biden, well, in no certain way certainly put it. But let's address two things here. This is not NATO's fault. It's not NATO's fault at all, because it doesn't logically work that if you are Putin and you are worried about NATO, why then would you pursue this aggressive course of action followed up by an invasion of a country? Because not only is this going to make NATO stronger, indeed in the last 24 hours, Finland and even Sweden have said maybe we should think about joining NATO. Something that up until, of course, this Ukrainian crisis, they were very firm that they were going to stand neutral and be of the position that if they ever did get invaded, then they would just instantly join NATO. That was their stance. But this crisis has essentially made them now reconsider that stance to actually join NATO. Something, again, Vladimir Putin has said, you know, should not happen. And by the way, they threatened Finland and Sweden that if they did join NATO, that there would be a response, which, again, considering what you've seen in Ukraine, is very worrying, because this is how Putin responds, with force. And once again, as we've said before, all this time, all these people saying, oh, Russia's never going to invade, etc., etc. Again, rather embarrassingly, of course, excuse me, I can't even see the screen at the moment. The sun's completely blocked it for me. Which, again, what a complete embarrassment for George Galloway. If you saw that Wednesday live stream where we caught him literally live, like literally hours before Putin would give the go-ahead to invade, saying that Russia would never invade and that there were no Russian troops in Russia, there were no Russian troops in Russia. That's a very 40k saying of, you know, there are no wolves on Fenris. You know, basically saying that you know, there were no Russian troops in Ukraine, but Later on, he would say in the live stream that there were obviously troops in the Donbass region, and that is a part of Ukraine. So, and of course, like I say, literally hours later, Putin would launch the invasion. So, quite frankly, it was an absolute complete and utter embarrassment for him. And I have left a comment down below in that video pretty much saying and calling him out for saying that. In fact, later on, I'm going to do a response video to his video where he gets the not like the Russia's top diplomat to the UK, but the secondary diplomat to the UK. And by the way, a YouTube channel that again, in that same video, claimed that he was not being supported by Russia, somehow, of course, managing to get a very top Russian diplomatic figure onto a YouTube channel. That's incredibly very suspicious straight away. And don't worry, we will be going over that probably later today. Not live, like I say, I'll do a recorded response to it for you all later to enjoy later on. But you know, as I said before to most of these leftists who well, denying reality, like I say, sorry if I can't read the screen, because like I say, the sun is in the unfortunate position where I literally can't see the screen. So if you sent me a question or anything like that, I'm sorry that I've missed it. Like I say, just an awkward position for the sun at the moment to be in, where if I go like this, I literally can't see the screen. So I'm sorry if I can't read your comment, anything like that at the moment. Yeah, we've got to look at obviously the situation on the ground, and even Russell Brand, by the way, even Russell Brand, on his YouTube channel, again, a video I may do a response to, calling him out for his incredibly bad takes, of course. Completely silent through all of this, only to put out a video of going, oh my god, Russia invaded Ukraine, who could have foreseen that? Everyone did, Russell, apparently you, who was somehow saying that it was, oh dear, this is what I feared. This is why when I said like the field was flooded, this is what I meant. It's still a bit flooded, but we can at least get around it this time, they say. Normally we can just walk straight across there and there is no giant, almost mini river that gets developed. But I did say the field was flooded, and that's why we couldn't come down here this time. This is what I'm talking about. So luckily though, this time we can go around. So around which we will go. But yeah, lots of leftists, unfortunately, again, like Brand, being fought. Well, at this point, there is no there are no excuses now. There is no excuse. You know, you are either well, either backed or being paid by Russia, like George Galloway is, or you are just a complete idiot who hasn't really followed who hasn't really followed the situation on the ground, and who really doesn't want to understand the situation on the ground, so he's just completely ignored it, being, well, a complete idiot. As you can see, like I say, normally this isn't here when we walk past here. This is why I said last week it was this complete field was almost underwater. This would have been, you know, a wading session, like I say. But yes, there is no longer any excuse. Either A, as we said, you are a Putin stan who is, again, bizarrely supporting Russia for I don't know reasons. I don't know what reasons you could possibly pick, but they were all wrong. Or you're just an idiot like Russell Brand. And I would hope, to be honest, those that are left, maybe it's more idiocy, and that I can at least forgive, but you can't forgive people like George Galloway who are, well, being, well, blatantly paid by these people. So it is incredibly worrying, of course, but we warned constantly that this was going to escalate. You know, in the weeks building up to this, starting off, of course, with our first, you know, Ben the J reporter. You may remember my talk with a conspiracy theorist about the Ukraine, where, again, it really did feel like I was, well, kicking a puppy. And he was pretty much agreeing with all my points, saying, well, what about this? What about this? How do you explain this? He's like, oh, well, I don't know, really. You will not be too surprised that I went back to check on him recently, and well, you quite frankly, you won't be surprised. That's all I have to say. You won't be surprised. Yeah. Like I say, it's good to get back out here again. It's good to be back out. I do love having this walk. So, yeah. As an update, obviously, to the situation. Hopefully it's not too windy. There we go. Like I say, hopefully, of course. There are, again, reports, and I am very much tended to side with them, that this invasion has not been going well for Putin, which is a good thing. We want this invasion not to go well. Hence why Putin very recently has been on almost daily on like Russian television, spouting off nonsense like he was yesterday, calling, basically saying, I can't deal with the current Ukrainian government. That's why I want you guys to rise up and overthrow your military. Yeah, not gonna happen at this point. Not gonna happen. Needless to say, Putin wants a quick war, but this is turning out to be anything but a quick war for Putin, which works in Ukraine's favor, because the more they stall, the more we're back in the shade now. Finally see the screen again. Thank you very much, Mitch. Nice to have a calming influence. Thank you, BHM. Thank you very much, Mitch, for being a member. Yeah, like I say, this isn't going well. So this invasion of Putin. Putin wanted the quickest war he could possibly have, and like I say, mostly because I think we have supplied just in the nick of time, literally just in the nick of time, Javelin missiles. And like I say, I'm not a religious person, but I posted yesterday, pray for those Ukrainian Javelin missiles, people, because I think the Ukrainians are going to need them very much in the coming days, especially around Kiev. Just this morning, we've had reports that the airport to the south of Kiev, there was an attempted landing by Russian paratroopers. And from what we know, again, as I've said, we are reporting about a war, which again is very fluid. There is information flying about all over the place, and it can take sometimes before it gets, shall we say, confirmed. But like I say, this morning I woke up to reports that was the current situation, that they had tried to land at the southern airport in Kiev, and from what we have heard, that the Ukrainians shot down a Russian plane, again attempting to force a landing, again, which was good, because the more you keep the Russians from surrounding Ukraine, not Ukraine, Kiev, because they've already surrounded it, the more you keep them from surrounding Kiev, and the longer that keeps up, the better it is for Ukraine in the long run. And make no mistake, this could become a very, very brutal and bloody war very, very quickly. Ukraine's had to mobilize. Ukraine has had no option but to mobilize. Like, they've had no option but to do that. Because, quite frankly, for their survival, they've got to. In fact, yesterday on, I think it was Sky News that reported it, you had the youngest member of the Ukrainian parliament, lining up with many citizens of Kiev to essentially get weapons ready to help and assist the army should the Russians start to make their way into the city. And from what we've seen very recently, they have been making incursions into the northern part of the city. We know they're present in the north part of the city. We know that they've pulled also some troops round to the area of the west of the city as well. Obviously, this attempt to take the airport, I wouldn't be surprised by the end of the day if you see reports that Russians and that there is fighting at that southern Kiev airport today. So, and ultimately, I think if you've saw my video just a couple of days ago about what I think tactically might happen, it seems that I was right. That especially if you split the theatre into like eastern Ukraine, which is probably going to be about very much about probably the investment of Kiev, and in the eastern part of Ukraine, it's going to be about trying to stop, which they currently are, very much so, stopping the forces that are coming up from Crimea and the forces that are coming in from the Russian border to essentially try and surround and encircle the Ukraine troops around in the Donbass region. That certainly seems to be what the plan is in Russia. Russian plan certainly is. But at the moment, we know that the Ukrainians are holding the line on there. And if you want to make a note of that, that if there is a collapse in that line, either the north or the south of the eastern Ukraine, then things could get very, very bad very quickly about that. Also, we have seen, surprisingly, because Putin has committed a lot of troops, obviously, to this invasion, we have seen Russia has mobilized as well. So why would, at this point, Russia mobilize when it's already got so many troops? That is ultimately because, from what we can see, they are preparing probably for an occupation of Ukraine. And as a lot of people have said at this point, the Ukrainians are probably also at this moment preparing for that as well, if it gets to that, of basically forcing them to fight a very, very bloody, especially for the Russians, a occupation campaign, which again will not go over well for Putin. So obviously that is but we hope it doesn't come to that. Like I say, because Putin's forces have been held, and the longer the Ukrainians hold the line, not only does more support come to them in terms of military and humanitarian support, which they are certainly going to need as well, the better it is for them. Also, time is not on Russia's side. The soil, especially in that area of the world, if it gets wet, it turns to mud almost instantly. And at the moment, there's the thaw that has frozen very much a lot of the ground. The more that thaw starts to set in, the more the ground will turn to mud. And that will essentially mean that the Russians cannot move their heavy equipment cross country, meaning that they will then be limited to roads, which basically means the Ukrainians will make them essentially pay with those wonderful javelin missiles that we've given them, inch by inch on that. So that is ultimately, like I say, probably the most accurate, up-to-date information I can give you. There may very well be updates on that situation, because like I said before, when you're talking about a war, you could report something and in the very next hour you could find out it's wrong, or the situation on the ground has changed completely. So be aware of that whenever we're reporting about Ukraine. The situation could change on a penny, on a dime flip, as they could say. Whoop. There we go. Hang on, Bowler Hat Man. Well, there are kind of bad news here in Sultana. The Bulgarians are dropping, and there is a chance of snow in the next 3 days. I don't know if the bad weather will go up. That's very true. Yes, I have seen that, Bakura. Like I say, pray for warm weather, by the way. Like I say, I'm not a religious person, but pray for warm weather. I have seen that. In fact, that has been some of the most impressive stuff, and also very good from a propaganda perspective, of course, of for Ukraine. Because remember, a lot of these soldiers are being told by Putin and their leaders that when they went into Ukraine, they would be welcomed. Again, as Chthonics just said, he's beat me to it. They would be welcomed, of course, as liberators. And the fact that you had that guy there, and I think he was literally just holding them off with a stick, and the entire column was held up while they were literally trying to, swerve round him, trying to do that. That is a very, very brave man indeed. Very, very brave man indeed. Putin accept defeat or would he escalate at any point to achieve his goals? I think he's going to escalate. Like I say, you wouldn't mobilize like Russia has mobilized unless you intend to occupy Ukraine. And it does seem, oh, there we go, very graceful. It does seem that is certainly seems to be the case, and that is going to be more escalation on this, of course. And yes, that's the other thing as well. You saw the woman giving the sunflower seeds to Russian soldiers. Again, if the Ukrainian citizens need to show and basically show their complete disdain and disapproval for Russian soldiers, especially if they don't want to fight. But what you saw there was very, very good, because especially in the East, like, old women are like valued as, like, wise, honorable, almost status symbols. So a really good thing to help demoralize these Russian troops would be for, again, groups of old women going round and chastising all these incredibly young men for essentially committing this invasion, because they are probably being told that they are going in as liberators. In fact, if you saw, Ukraine captured an entire column, and the column surrendered because they didn't realize they'd been told to go in and kill, which, again, massive PR victory for Ukraine. Massive PR victory for Ukraine. So, and of course, we had also the guy, oh my word, the Russian tank that ran over like a civilian car, not just once, but reversed over it. The guy survived. He survived, and he must certainly be incredibly lucky. He must be absolutely incredibly lucky to have survived that. There's not too many people can say they've survived, a tank, rolling over and crushing their car while that's in the case. But yeah. The Baba Yaga brigades. True. But that is actually incredibly important for it. How long? Oh, thank you very much, Cathology. Thank you very much for the coverage of this. Well, thank you very much for supporting the channel. Like I say, thank you very much. Hang on. Here we go. Kura. How long do you think it will take for one of Russia's non-coordinated attacks to go wrong and hit a NATO country and finally get NATO involved? Who knows, Bakura? Who knows? But we do know that for the very first time in history, the NATO response, I suppose the the NATO response squad is active, which again is a good sign for Ukraine, because if they can keep and they can hold the line and delay the Russians as much as possible, then the more chance of help coming to their aid. And that's the message that we've got to send, and the message that we've got to send to our leaders. I've already sent a message to my MP, and again, if you were, regardless of whoever you are today, you need to message your MP or member of parliament or member of government, wherever you may be, that we need to get as much support as we can for Ukraine, whether it be sending them weapons, sending them logistics support, the vehicles, trucks, again, very helpful, again, in their war. Again, like I say, if you've played Hoi 4, you know important how logistics are at the moment in the current game and meta. So getting them, equipment like that will be very, very helpful. But this will mean, of course, that we can't just, drop it off in a boat at the moment. That will be quite dangerous. But we can, of course, send it to Poland, Romania, Moldova, Slovakia, send it there, and then send it across the border to make sure that it gets there. I think that's the. I've forgotten how muddy this gets. So it is important that NATO does help support Ukraine, even if it's a non-military capacity. That is something that we should be pushing for. Because I put it this way, Ukraine cannot win on its own. They can only hope that, as we saw in Georgia back in 2008, the fighting lasted 5 days before it got brought to a stalemate, and Putin essentially gave up. That is what we can hope. But from what we've seen, and of course Russia mobilizing its forces even more, does indicate that they do intend for an occupation of Ukraine. And like I say, that's almost now a certainty, given the current trajectory of the situation. Like I say, I think this is going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And like I say, we've got to send any help that we can for this. Oh, Catherine Larkin, welcome back. Welcome back. I wondered where you'd gone. Are you ready to admit you were wrong, that Russia was never going to invade Ukraine? It was all somehow NATO pushing for this? Yeah. Bakura. Oh, hang on. My warehouse manager is Polish, and one worker is Romanian. They're worried about their families and annoyed me watching the hosts of Late Last Night made about them. So yeah, it's true. I think many of those other Eastern European countries, and bear in mind, the situation in Ukraine has proved these countries right. They've proved these countries right. By the way, for joining NATO. This is the situation in Ukraine is exactly the situation that they were worried about. So if, like I say, if anything, if this idea was that Putin wanted less nations to join Ukraine, to join NATO, he's only gone and done the opposite. You know, he's only gone and done the opposite. You know, we've had Sweden and Finland. We've had Sweden and Finland, two very neutral countries so far, in terms of like a NATO membership, turn around and say, maybe we should join. And if anything, this aggression is only going to make NATO stronger, of course. So if the idea was to stop NATO expansion, Putin doing this has only accelerated it, thus proving once and for all this was never ever about, quote, legitimate security concerns for the Russian state. Again, completely and provably false, because why would you pursuing this action? Of course. So, again, it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. Yeah, and you are right. Putin's warned them against joining NATO. But bear in mind, thank you very much, Chris Ryan. Given the lack of any real reaction from the West, the extra force mobilization could be to keep going into Europe. That's an unfortunate possibility. Like I say, Putin has said he wants to retake, you know, the Russian Empire, which is very, very much, yeah, that's true, Bakura. That is what a lot of lefties on the are now feeling the pain, because they got this wrong. They fell for Russian propaganda. They did indeed fall for Russian propaganda on this. There's no two ways about it. They fell hook, line and sinker for it. Yeah, NATO isn't strong enough to invade Russia. That's very true. Because it's been ignored for years. It's been ignored for years. And again, I just want to get back to, obviously, the comment that Bakura made about, you know, people he knows in Poland and Romania, who are, again, very, very worried for their families, because Putin has said he wants to retake the Russian Empire, saying that, oh, Jesus Christ, there we go, saying that Lenin was a fool for giving up the empire. Now that means, of course, the Baltic states, so Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, all Jesus Christ, this mud. This means that these countries, Romania, Poland, Moldova, Georgia again, are now all potentially in the firing line. In fact, as we said, the leader of let's get it right, Azerbaijan, had a phone call to say, you said you wanted to retake the Russian Empire. You don't mean us, do you? So very, very, there's a lot of very, very worried countries at the moment. A lot of very, very worried countries. And bear in mind, this was the reason, in the first case, why they joined NATO. This is why they joined NATO. So, and also, by the way, the first modern ace, by the way, that should absolutely be congratulated. We don't know his name, but his call sign is Fulcrum, I think it was, but he's been nicknamed the Ghost of Kiev. In the first day of fighting, he shot down 5 Russian planes. And bear in mind, the Ukrainian Air Force is but a tiny drop in the ocean that is essentially the Russian Air Force. But moreover, more impressively, this guy took on in an old, I think it was a MiG-29. Like, this is equipment that was like new back in the, I think it was like the 80s. to see how old this equipment is. And he took on modern fighters in like a 30-year-old plane. And that should be absolutely congratulated and talked about again constantly. It was absolutely fantastic. Anyway, Bakura, sorry, what you're saying here. Sorry, like I say, you have to forgive me. Sometimes, like I say, the sun is in my eyes and I can't see it. Like I said on the last leg yesterday, the hosts were going on about how it made them feel and how they'd hate for their daughters to be in that, and got so annoyed it made me about them. Very true. Like I say, there's a lot of lefties that, as we said before in the lead up to this, bizarrely backing Russia and basically somehow saying that the USA through NATO was like forcing Russia to invade. No. The only person that's done this and shown this aggression is Putin, and of course forcing these people, especially the Russians, who are again, most of these, the Russian army age is made up of like 18 to 21 year olds. And I think it's very well worth reminding that in Russia we have seen a lot of anti-war protesters going on. And again, considering how we've seen protesters normally, shall we say, be treated in Russia, the Russian people are indeed very brave. And we have seen in the past couple of days Russians speak out against this invasion, how ashamed of this and their actions they feel. Because under a better regime, those boys currently fighting on the wrong side of this war, on the Russian side in particular, could be being trained to be engineers, or maybe be chefs, artists, maybe even the next, Russian male ballerina superstar could, all for we know, be in that in that current situation, being in Ukraine, and maybe a bit, learning about art or drama, or writing and creating music. There's so much better things that these young Russians could be doing, but unfortunately, because of the regime that they live under, they have been forced into a war that very clearly the Russian people do not want. We have to remember that just as much as we are seeing the Ukrainians be very much victims of Putin's aggression, the Russian people are also victims of Putin's aggression as well. So that is obviously worth bearing in mind, of course, over this. Yeah, that is probably what could happen the next couple of days. Sorry, I've missed your name there. But yeah, we could be expecting probably the next week or so, Russian forces, like I say, they are currently attempting to try and surround Kiev. And that could turn very nasty. Like I say, a city under siege situation, especially with the power of modern artillery. You've only got to look at pictures of the fierce fighting in Syria and see how very, very quickly a city can be reduced to rubble. And that is very, very worrying. That's very, very worrying indeed. And, you know, my hope and prayers do go out to the safety of, again, the people of Ukraine, and especially the citizens of Kiev. In this a special time for them. And like I say, I'm not a religious person, but you can't help really say the word prayer in this case. It's very difficult. What's that? Oh, this is brilliant. I heard yesterday, even the Taliban, yes, they have. That is true, Bakura, yeah. The Taliban have even expressed their concerns for the safety of Ukrainian citizens in the act of Russian aggression. Yeah. Put it this way, those people who are, again, still supporting Russia, even the Taliban are on the right side in this, and yet there are still many people on the left insisting that's not. So yeah, so this is indeed you know, a bizarre turn up for the books, of course, on this. And again, it's really difficult to say what's going to happen. It's really difficult to predict, obviously, what's going to happen. As I've said before, the situation in Ukraine will change, I think, very drastically, very quickly. But of course, there we go. There we go. It's really difficult to say which way this is all going to go, and even how this is even all going to end. But needless to say, Putin has laid out what he wants to happen. He basically is going to occupy Ukraine and then engage in what he calls the denazification of the country, which is, to be honest, laughable. As we've said before, in total at the last Ukrainian election, far-right parties got less than 2% of the vote, which is less than most other countries in Europe at the moment. Not only that, Ukraine has an incredibly big Jewish population, and the current president is Jewish. So once again, I'd like to remind you, anyone falling for that nonsense, that's pure Putin propaganda. He wants to install essentially a friendly regime by force. And then he's very clearly said that he's going to disarm Ukraine, which basically means they are going to end up, most probably now, with a permanent Russian troop occupation, potentially, of their country. And any attempts at a revolution or to force these Russians out, like they did in the Euromaidan protests back in 2014, could very, very well be met with a far, far more violent response, which is even more worrying, of course, for the future of Ukraine. And that is what is at stake: the future sovereignty and the freedom of these people to, well, of the Ukrainians to make their own decisions. And that is what Putin would indeed deny them. And we are talking about almost a permanent occupation of the country, for which many Ukrainians are prepared to fight to the death to make sure that their country remains free. And to be honest, who wouldn't, given that situation? So that is the stake, is really what is at stake for Ukrainians. And that is why, we've seen so many people and civilians volunteer and take up arms to help support the army. And when that urban fighting starts, like I say, it's just a matter of time, really, before it does start. We will see the Ukrainian people fight tooth and nail, and at that point they're going to need even more support than they are now. So we have to hope that the Ukrainian army does continue to stand and resist as much as possible the aggressive invader that is Russia in their country. There is no if and or buts here. There is no sides, whataboutisms to make. Russia has been the aggressor, and even this pony agrees with me. Or should we say this horse? Well, you agree with me, don't you? Russia bad. Yes, he agrees. Russia bad. So that's the situation, unfortunately, in Ukraine. No one wanted it to get to this level, but the only person who decide that are essentially the people being, well, is the Russians. There's not a lot, unfortunately, we can say about it, other than we have to hope for the best, and we have to hope the Ukrainian army does continue to stand. And of course, the patron saint of javelin missiles continues to bless the Ukrainian armed forces with true sight and accuracy. Because those, like I say, those missiles And the next couple of days are going to be more needed than ever. So, as always, thank you very much for joining me on this good morning walk. Like I say, it's been some time since we had one, but of course when you do something like this that is very much weather dependent, especially when we've had 3 weeks in a row of storms, it's been a bit difficult to actually do this to do this live. But of course, as always, thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. Like I say, do hit that like and share button, helps out the channel massively. Of course, if you would like to support the channel another way, there are again links down below to my Patreon page, or off donation link as well. And thank you very much to the people who have donated today on today's stream. Thank you very much. As always, your support is very much greatly appreciated. And of course, like I say, stay tuned, because normally, developments, and of course as war is very fluid, situations could change rapidly, very, very quickly. But like I say, we hope that Ukraine does indeed stand in this. So we can only hope for the best in this situation. But as always, we'll see what actually we won't see you next weekend, because I'm going to be down in London for a job next weekend. So I will see you 2 weeks from today on this, but we are having a Sunday brunch tomorrow. I will let you know what form that will take. There's going to be me, Max, Political X, and maybe a couple of other people as well, discussing the thoughts of the days. But yes, we'll see you all very soon for another Good Morning Walk.